Hello, 大家好, I'm Grace. Have you ever wondered how, given that each Chinese character has many strokes, people manage to write them quickly for class notes or when filling out paperwork? As a native Chinese speaker, today I will share with you how I write in daily life. Some of the tips I provide might also help you start writing faster. Let's go! First, let me give you a little background on how native Chinese speakers learn to write Chinese characters. When we're young, we start to practice writing them at school. We will write a character over and over again, understanding its radical, the stroke order, and writing direction. After a lot of practice, we start being able to write them without having to think much about their structure and their stroke order. It kind of becomes automatic to us. However, there's still a big difference between how children and adults write. Here, 这是我小时候写的字. These are the Chinese characters I wrote when I was little. 是我写给妈妈的母亲节卡片. By the way, I'm from Taiwan, so this has traditional Chinese characters. You can see that each character is written quite big, and each stroke is rather separated. This is usually how children write because they're still practicing writing Chinese characters and getting better at it. Now compare this to my Chinese writing when I was in university. It's an exam paper on Chinese philosophy. This exam took about 3 hours, and I wrote around 2,000 to 2,500 Chinese characters. I don't write particularly fast, but I'm fast enough to finish my exams and take notes in class. You can see that some of the characters are more connected compared to how I wrote as a child. The strokes connect even more obviously if you look at my professor's writing. Here are some writings from my other teachers. Because they have numerous assignments to grade, they need to write pretty fast. You can see that they connect many strokes and write quite like cursive. Honestly, I can't even read some of the words sometimes because they're written too cursively. This is just to show you how the Chinese characters can look like when native speakers write fast. But it doesn't mean that you need to write like this. I personally don't write so cursively. But I still write way faster compared to how I wrote as a child. Now let's talk about the reasons why I'm writing faster now. Firstly, it's because I've developed the muscle memory for writing characters. As I mentioned earlier, when we're children, we learn to write Chinese characters with their stroke order and writing direction. After a lot of practice, now when I'm writing a character, I wrote down one stroke and I will immediately know where the next stroke is and my hand will just move there without much thinking. So if you're also practicing or planning to start writing Chinese characters, it's important to know their stroke order and the direction to write them in, like from left to right, from top to bottom, etc. By practicing them with their stroke order and direction, you will start developing muscle memory in writing them. And if you need help with that, I recommend using Scritter. It's a useful tool for helping you learn Chinese characters. It not only provides you with a guide on how to write each Chinese character, you can also learn more details about the characters along the way. I will put a link in the description. Feel free to check it out. But if you want a free tool, you could use Placo, a Chinese dictionary. You can search a word in it and click on stroke. Then you can see the stroke order for that particular character. Okay, the second reason is that I connect some strokes when writing. When I was little, I learned to write Chinese characters stroke by stroke, which is crucial for building a strong foundation. However, as we grow older and face situations that require faster writing, many people begin to connect some strokes in characters. For example, here's how to write 所以 in a standard way. But the way I will write it now is I connect some strokes when writing, and while doing so, I also change the original direction of how some strokes should be written, like this. I also do this with 口 when it's used as a component, like this. It's just the way I do it because it helps me write faster. But it doesn't mean that every native Chinese speaker writes in this way. People have their own preferred ways to connect strokes, which is why there are many different writing styles. I also have a friend who doesn't connect strokes, yet still writes quite fast. Here is what her writing looks like. Now I will demonstrate 5 common words to give you a sense of how I connect some strokes when writing. These words are the same in both simplified and traditional characters, so don't worry about the difference. Also, just a heads up, the stroke order I use might not be the most standard, because as I was growing up, I may have developed some habits that made it easier for me to write, and became accustomed to writing in that way. Now let's take a look at them. 知道 可以 好吃 教室 希望 The last tip I use to make myself write faster is simplifying some complex characters. In traditional Chinese, some characters really have a lot of strokes. As a traditional character user, sometimes I simplify complex characters. I learned most of the simplified versions from my teachers. For example, I have a teacher who always wrote 树 like this. So I started to write like this as well. Some other examples. 声 体 写 You can see that some of these are not the same as the standard simplified characters. This is mostly because they're usually just for yourself to read, so you can simplify it quite freely. However, it's important to know that we usually do this when the writing is for personal use, such as taking notes in class or writing to-do lists. When I'm writing assignments or filling out paperwork, I never make these simplifications because others might not understand what I've written. Today's video is not a tutorial on exactly how to write faster. As you have seen, people have different writing styles, and my intention is simply to share my personal experience. I hope you found it both fun and helpful. Now I'm curious, have you ever felt like you don't write fast enough? Or if you do write quickly, what's your secret? What techniques have you used to improve your writing speed? Feel free to share them in the comments. By the way, I'm also considering making a video about the basics of writing Chinese characters, but I'm not sure if there's much interest in that. Please comment and let me know if you found this type of content helpful. Alright, 如果你喜欢今天的影片，别忘记按赞、订阅和分享哦。And also, if you'd like to support me in making more content, please visit my Ko-fi page. The link is in the description below. Thank you so much. Last but not least, if you want to learn some daily Mandarin expressions, check out my Instagram, Grace Mandarin. 那我们下次见喽，拜拜。